Uh, Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Angry Agent Uncle podcast. I am your host, Reynold, and my
Hi,
co
I'm
host,
Vic. Hello,
Vic.
everybody.
All right. So today we have a special guest all the way from Taiwan, Molly.
Yay, where
Molly,
I'm at. Yeah,
yeah,
for a
where
change.
Vic is. So, Molly, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Molly. I am a born and raised Taiwanese in Taipei. That's not making sense. But I'm a Taiwanese. I was born and raised in Taipei. I went to the US to study and work for a while, and then I came back. Now I'm working at the entertainment industry. So I have some experiences with the Taiwanese industry, the US, and Canadian, and some of part of European industry as well. Yeah.
Interesting.
Very talented. Yes. So, so before we started recording, you're telling us why you got into the industry. So, you wanted to elaborate again, why you got into it?
So I started working in the industry because I fall in love with a lot of like good movies and TV shows, like Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel, Aaron
That's a good
Sorkin's The
one. That's a good
Newsroom,
one. Yeah, the Grand Budapest
and
Hotel. That's good.
then yeah, and then also Game of Thrones before season 6 and 8. And
Oh man.
so like as I enjoy those shows and movies, I also start wondering how is it always that, like the US or European, especially UK, British, French content that were able to be broadcast and being loved by everyone in the world. So I was wondering why couldn't Taiwanese content do that? Because I do remember there were a period of time like you have some of really nice Taiwanese shows like 麻辣鲜师 or like 终极一家, something like that. That was really
Mhm.
popular in Taiwan and some part of Asia. I was just wondering why we couldn't try to sell that to also like go basically to US or other places. So I decided to like basically try to study film and then work in the industry to understand how like the other industry does this, like how do they develop a story, make it, and eventually distribute and market that. So I went to Syracuse for my master, and I also started working in the industry to kind of learn how do people do this like that.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, so I always wonder why does like Korean dramas like what was it? Get all the hype or the K-pop and then and then because I and the Chinese ones don't get any. Like why does everyone love like Squid Games and
Yeah,
BTS and then whatever was that girl group Blackpink?
Blackpink? Yeah.
Blackpink,
Well,
and then
Yeah.
yeah,
the
why they
movie
get there, right?
Parasite.
Why no one likes Jay Chow?
I don't know. I think Jay Chou actually still has a lot of fans in the US, from my understanding. I'm not sure. But I think as I grow, like as I explore more, I think it has a lot to do with what kind of story they were trying to tell and then how much resources that we pour in when it comes to marketing and distribution. Because I think compared to Taiwanese industry. Even for the Korean industry, they are very commercial business like leaning. Like for them, the ultimate goal is obviously profits. But for a lot of filmmakers in Taiwan, they all feel like they are tasked with trying to do more humanitarian or social good, but they are not necessarily thinking about what the audience want. It sounds kind of harsh, but I feel like a lot of this is like a differences where in Korea you have both government fund support but also like the support from different commercial companies. So when they were thinking about contents, they always have to think about not just how to make it appeal to the government and then also appeal to the audience to create that kind of commercial profits to appeal to like sponsorship and everything. But in Taiwan, we are, in general, we are all being supported by the government. So wherever we are creating the story, they are always focusing on how do we appeal to the government so the government will approve our project and then they will give us the money. Um,
Is that
it's
the
it's
reason
very
why a lot of Korean shows have all these sponsored products in every shot?
Yeah, and then that's one of the reasons. And then if you go to our Ministry of Culture website, like we have actually has a lot of funding for short film, feature films, blah blah blah, or just for developing scripts, right? And then if you go through the list every year, you can see not a lot of the show after they got the funding and then they complete, but they are not being released anywhere. That's
Mm,
also part of the issue because a lot of people just thought because once you complete it, there's really no need for them to continue to push the movie forward because they already got the money from the government, right? There's not necessarily a reason for them to keep releasing and then keep promoting. And then when you're promoting the budget to the government when it comes to this issue, you never include the money you need for marketing or film festival run or for marketing on social media or anywhere else. So I think that's a really major issue why we are lacking. But now I think some of the part of the government departments are trying to provide supports for marketing and stuff. But those money compared to like the Hollywood movie or with the Korean movie is relatively very little. Let's just say that. So like for commercial, like let's say a Hollywood movie, right? Usually the budget for the marketing it's almost depending on how big the movie is, but usually it can be as much as they spend on the movie production itself.
mm,
So that's a crazy amount of money that they spend on marketing. But a
mm,
lot of Taiwanese movie didn't really had the ability to do that. That's also some of the reason. Like they basically put it everywhere, like to have selective screening, to have merchandise, to have ads everywhere. But that's not really how the Taiwanese movie um, promote. A lot of times they use like Kobe. Does that make sense? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you just have some people say, "Oh, this movie is good," and then keep spreading, 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 spreading. But it's
Mm,
not sometimes not enough, and then especially in how algorithm will always create the 同温层, right? You're not really trying to break through your market. You're always stay
mm,
in the same market. You're not
mm,
going to get more audiences. I think
mm,
that's kind of the I think that plays a lot of big issue. And then also like mm, yeah, I think that's kind of actually the main issue. Like other some parts also maybe about like some of the story structure. Some story might be too cultural or historical specific. But I think ultimately it came down with how we are lacking a lot of experiences, talents, and money when it comes to distribution and marketing.
mm. Yeah. Sounds like it's almost as important as the film itself.
It is, especially now, like everyone gets to make their own film. You have so much access. Everyone can have their own movies. Like, how do you stand up in the sea of movies, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's definitely like a big challenge. Like you can obviously hope to have algorithm suddenly just bless you and then, oh my
Mm.
God, I have dedicate you to be the I don't know, the golden child, but that's like one in a billion, perhaps. Yeah.
Also, I think that just because critics like it or if you win awards doesn't automatically translate to box office success, right?
Yeah. That's kind of how it already kind of was like that before you have social media and everything. But like at the time, film festival run or film critic used to be like a really good way to help you to decide what kind of movie at the theater you want to see. But now it doesn't really have the same influence as it was in the past. And then also because a lot of film festival run movies don't really get distributed anymore. A lot of times they just got a deal with Netflix or HBO, Amazon, so they directly just went to streaming. And then
Mm.
once you go into the streaming, no one really promoted anymore. So not a lot of people watch it either. So it's just very different. And then how do you try to encourage more people to watch your movie? I think in our era now, you have to kind of think in a way that you are like an influencer, which is kind of sad, but
Yeah,
that's how it is.
Yes.
yeah.
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 You have to use social media.
Yeah, you have to use social media. Like when Parasite, the Korean movie, when they were first got acquired by Neon, the
Mm.
US distribution company, they actually create a lot of really, really sophisticated marketing strategies, including in the social media like Instagram or Facebook. They create a series of really, really well organized posts to attract people, and then after people actually realize this is a story about like class conflicts, which is also something that the US is facing, right? The wealthy gap and then everything. So it become like a really, really big buzz in the US. And it eventually led to the movie got selected into Oscar and then become everyone's
Mm.
like topic. That's how kind of everything happened. So I will say Neon at the I think still now they are really good at acquiring international movies and then trying to sell this in the US market industry, which is incredible because no matter what Trump said, the actual movies that got acquired and released in the US, it's very, very little compared to all the domestic produced movies. It was like probably less than 5% of the movie that actually got released in the US. And then Parasite get to be something that's so big. I think a lot of credit has to go to Neon, the marketing distribution company.
So it sounds to me like the film industry has a lot of moving parts to make it work. I mean, there's the issue of money, there's the issue of promotion, there's the issue of culture, there's the issue of production. It just seems like there's so many moving parts to make this whole machine operate that any one of those parts go wrong, and you'll have a lot of setbacks in trying to make a film successful. It sounds like a really tough industry.
It is a very tough industry. Like I remember we were supposed to film a Christmas movie. It was super fun. I like the kind of idea. It's like a rom-com and also containing LGBTQ elements. And then we were supposed to film in January, and then up until December we have to put it off because we lost the funding, which
Oh,
is
wow.
really, really sad because I was really looking forward to like work in that movie, even though it's so cold in Syracuse. But I love it. Like I like that story, and I wish like at some point people can enjoy that kind of Christmas movie. Because like I personally feel like for now, even till now, all our Christmas movie are very heterosexual orientated, family, that kind of traditional family values. So I want to see something that's different, that can also kind of match with some new ideas, and then like to have different kind of Christmas feelings for other people as well. So I was feeling really disappointing when that happened. But that's kind of how the industry is. You can never know if you actually can completely secure the fund. You don't know if you can actually have your work being noticed and recognized. Ultimately depending on if you have faith in yourself and in
Mm.
the story that you're telling.
I think Molly, you also bring up a good point between what maybe the studio wants versus what the artist wants, right? I mean, a lot of people in the industry, they do have a passion for it, and then they go into it, like yourself, for example. You go into it because you have a passion for it, you love storytelling, and so there's the artistic side of you that wants to produce a body of work that you can be proud of. Yet the commercial realities of surviving within the industry is constantly at odds with what you want to produce as an artist. So that constant tension, I find that quite interesting in your line of work.
It's kind of funny because that was kind of the reason why I got tired of being in LA. Because whenever you create a story, whether as a director or writer, right, and then you have a conversation with the producer or with your counselor, mentor, they will always ask you, so what's the selling point, and how does this story related to the audience, and how do you think you can package the story, right? Like, how do you make this convincing or have the commercial appeals? Because ultimately, from a producer's perspective, movie is not just art, it's a product that they have to sell to the investor and then to make sure they can get certain return, certain ROI. So every time when you look at a story, when you're evaluating, you always are thinking about not just the movie itself, but whether the story can become an IP. Can you further develop it into like merchandise, games, TVs, other spin-off, everything like that. And then at some point you kind of get tired of it. And then when I was in LA, I kind of get bored and I was thinking like perhaps it might be better to kind of switch to not be this like just full of money, full of that focus. But then like
Mm.
coming back, it's like the opposite side. Like I'm basically staying on the two side of the extreme. One part extremely care about money, the other part extremely does not. And I
Yeah.
wish there's like a balance where I can find and then to help people to understand like it's good to talk about and think about money, but also there are some part where it's essential to remain some of the artistic differences and then the creativity needs to be there to attract people. But currently I'm like staying on two side of extreme. I currently have not find a balance in it.
Yeah, there's that constant tension there, right? I'm old enough
Yeah,
to have followed enough movie stars over the course of my lifetime to know that a lot of them during interviews, they would say that there are particular films that they're very proud of and that they accepted those roles because it satisfied their artistic pursuit. And they would also take on films strictly because they needed the money.
yeah,
They wanted to make sure that they're known in the industry as an actor that can pull in the sales because you need some of those and you're a bankable actor or a bankable actress and so it's always like they would take a few that is for making money, but they would also take a few that, even if it's just an art film, it's obscure and unknown, but to them, it's meaningful personally. So, like a lot of the older actors that I've followed have said that in interviews.
yeah. I mean, a lot of like if you don't know, a lot of directors, if their career is solely just as a director, they actually like even Wes Anderson, he actually shot a lot of commercial shows. Like he got a lot of actual money to support himself and for the money based on commercial. Those indie movies doesn't really get him a lot of money. So that's kind of how the reality is. And I also know a
Mm,
lot of friends and other coworkers, they film a lot of commercial documentary because that's a lot of times like commissioned by the companies, and then they will use the money they save up to eventually develop their own indie movie. That's kind of
interesting.
how
Right,
it
right.
is, which is just like it's a hustle. Like the whole
Yeah,
industry is just a
yeah.
hustle. Like not just like there's also, like how a lot of people the story is true. Like you go to LA, you work as a waitress, but at the same time you take on gigs. That's just
Mm.
how this industry is.
Okay, so pulling it back to Taiwan, is it also the same over here, or what are the nuances?
Um, it's kind of also like that because also at the same time you need to be aware that the film industry here, well, the entertainment industry as a whole is much, much smaller here. So
Mm,
the resources, the connection, it's tighter, smaller. So a lot
mm,
of people that I know, they also like they are the delivery guy at the Uber Eats or
mm.
like Food Panda, something like
Yeah.
that, when they were not working on gigs. But there are some
Mm.
of the people who might just use their free time to make movies because this is becoming more like their interest hobbies like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do they
yeah, like
depend?
it's
Do they
different.
depend? Do you think they depend on? Because I know a lot of artists, actors. I had a friend. They would go to China, just like how just regular people go get work at in China for more money. Actors and actresses and singers and whatnot, they go to China to because a lot to get to get acting jobs for for more money because Taiwan market is so small.
I think it used to be the case because there was a period of time, I think it was during the 2010s, there's
Mm,
like a huge demand of like entertaining content in China as well. And then they
mm,
have more funding when it comes to making content. So a lot of not just actresses, there's a lot of director also went there as well. But now China also developed their own talent, and then they also have their own actors, actresses now. So not like compared to the 2010s, now there aren't really a lot of people who went to China to trying to do that. And then, as you know, the politics tension between China and Taiwan is always kind of on and off.
yeah.
And even it's a completely commercial space, this is often get affected by politics as well. So it wasn't as it's not the same as it was back in 2010 because I remember 2010 was really really different. Like it is absolutely true where at the time almost everyone want to go to China, but now it's kind of like not necessarily the same because of how the market has changed, but also because of how the politics is different now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because at the time, like you have to consider how the historical background in China was. At the time, they don't really have the talents or people who can make good content or to attract the Chinese audience. There was a time the Taiwanese entertainment industry was very blooming and then attract a lot of like Korean, Japanese, and China audience.
Mm,
And so at the time, they always welcome those talents to come to their industry to work. But now they develop their own like talents. They have their own famous actors and actresses. So the need for the Taiwanese talent kind of also reduce. So it
mm,
will just like they in the past it was like you might have a better shot if you're Taiwanese actors or talents, but now like you have to compete with all the other talents that's in the market.
mm. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on technology being something that levels the playing field for everybody? Because I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that technology might give certain advantages to up and coming directors or actors to have a shot at putting out their content even without going through some of the traditional routes or studios, like with the advent of easy upload to different social media sites, and then even your iPhone can shoot in 4K, right? Do you think technology sort of gives an edge to level the playing field a little bit for aspiring actors?
And it's a good question. And I feel like it has to be answered by different perspective. Like if we just talk about the technology, right? There's not just AI, there's actually about how, as you say, iPhone shooting 4K, better filming equipment and stuff. For those side of the things, like equipment wise, I think was really amazing. As you know, Sean Baker shot his first film on an iPhone, and the recent Oscar running film, The Left-Handed Girl, it's also shot on iPhone as well. So it's really nice because it's like you are like removing the gatekeepers for people,
Mm,
and then now they can also film movies by themselves. And then also with DaVinci, which is completely free software for you to learn editing and color grading. That's
mm,
also like a really good thing for independent filmmakers who couldn't afford like let's say like more expensive option like Avid or other editing and color grading system.
mm,
However, um, I have a very mixed feeling when it comes to AI because I think a lot of people kind of think, oh, no, we can produce like completely AI made movies. but it's not really that interesting to me.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
also feel like people have to realize the reason why AI is able to generate what we have seen now was because they analyze a lot of the works that the people in the past were done. And
that's a good point.
none
Yeah,
of those offers consent to the use of that. And then you also have to understand that ultimately it's not really the technology that creates art, it's actually the people in the past. Their work ultimately led to the AI generated work. So it's
yeah,
really not technology that creates arts. You're just kind of using old works from other people without consent.
yeah. I
That's
know
kind of
Hayao
how.
Miyazaki is really upset at using too much AI or using too much computer graphics. He loves stuff that's hand drawn because he feels that it's an imprint of the artist's soul, right?
Yeah, I mean, it might be a really useful tool when you are still in the developing and planning stage for any filmmakers. But I feel like to actually just call this as a final product is very disrespectful. Please don't hate me, but I'm not a fan of AI
No, it's
filmmakers.
not. It's
Like,
called
It's
I
AI
don't think
slop.
I
It's,
have
AI
it's
no
called
I
AI
don't
preference.
think
slop for a
AI
reason,
filmmaker
right?
should be a
Yeah.
word. Like, that's not how it works. But like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, of course. It's called AI slop for a reason. Yeah. Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
I don't think it's inherently bad because ultimately, when you create something, you should always just think about how can it helps you to make better works. But it's just there's some wording as AI become bigger and bigger that makes me feel like no, that's not how that works. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Reynold, do you remember back in the day when we were growing up and we watched a lot of our favorite movies and a lot of the effects were practical effects, right? They were actually puppets, they were real
Oh yeah,
explosions, they were real sets or locations, and somehow those films have a timeless quality to them, right? It doesn't
oh yeah.
feel
Like
like I'm watching a green screen. You know what I mean?
I mean, remember I used to love watching Jackie Chan movies, right? And then they always have
Yeah.
those at the ending credits where they have him they show him doing all the stunts. There's like no strings or whatever. He's all getting bruised up and like banged up. Like
Yeah.
the ambulance is just waiting right there to pick him up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No,
Yeah, but
I love actual practical sets, and I think most of the good movies, even nowadays, are trying to utilize more of those practical effects and try to limit the use of CGI because I think our brains can tell. So a little bit of special effects is good, but then when there's too much of it, it kind of takes away from some of the magic or realism that you that helps you immerse in the film. That's my opinion, at least.
I feel like it's depending on what kind of special effect that they chose. Because like special effect actually exists in the industry for a very long time now. Like even for like I think on Facebook I saw a lot of memes to talk about like they used to have really good, which is like Pirates of Caribbean, and then they compared that to a bunch of Marvel movies and then called the Marvel special effect a slop. But I think it more has to do with how much dedication they put and then how much resources they put into making the special effect. That's kind of how I feel. Because I
Mm.
think one of the reason, like obviously, there's a quote that everyone in the industry hate, but always joke about like it's fine, we can fix this in post. And in fact, you cannot fix everything in post.
Mm.
Um, basically this is how it works. Like as long as you do more planning before production, your production will usually go better. And then if you do more work in your production, your post production will be happy as well. So a lot of movies, I think, especially for Pirates of Caribbean, the reason why a lot of their effect looks so good, it's also they spend a lot of effort and resources when they were already filming. But I think for Marvel, a lot of movies at the time, they just kind of decided, okay, we're gonna do just to fix this in post. We're having green screen, and then we're just gonna fix it, and then this is fine. This is fine, because a lot of, honestly, the money they have for the movies, most of them actually go to the talents, right? Because they always hire really big names or hire names that eventually getting big, so they have to negotiate a contract, and then the money spent on the talent just grows and grows and grows, but the money they actually spend on post-production team, it's just going down, 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 to the point there was a period of time all the Marvel post-production teams were trying to unionize and then trying to ask for more and better treatment, right? And I think that's ultimately like one of the reasons why you think the recent CGI doesn't feel as good as it used to be. I think it ultimately has to do with what happened behind the scene. But obviously, not a lot of people can tell you what happened because that's top secret. And then people don't want to talk about stuff because once you talk about stuff, a lot of times you're worried about repercussion and everything. So
Speaking of production, though, Molly, well, how would you rank Taiwan's film industry against its neighbors in Asia? And after that, how would you rank us compared to, say, more international standings, like versus Hollywood versus some of the European studios? Like, where do we rank?
what do you mean by that? Like as in
How
like
good are we? Like, are we like 20 years behind, or are we like sort of catching up? You know, where are we at?
I would say it's a paradoxical situation. Like it's complicated. Basically, I feel like compared to Japanese production, we are actually much better because we
Oh,
work with
interesting.
some of the Japanese company. They came to film in Taiwan, and then I was asking like, how do you guys like? What are your workflow is like? And then they were like, we're just gonna film 12 to 14 hours nonstop and keep filming until they got everything, and that scares me because it's actually very dangerous for. And then also, I think
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's not safe. It's not great to film
right,
that
right,
long hours.
yeah.
Um, and then Taiwan used to be like that. And then there is even there in the past there were so many cases of production didn't insure their staff. I don't know if you know, but there
Mm.
used to be a production where production staff fall from the cliff
Yeah, I think I heard
and
about
that
that.
person
Yeah.
doesn't have an insurance, which is crazy as well. So like now the industry is slowly changing. They're slowly trying to make sure the work hours are within 12 hours following the US union standards. Um but at the same time it's kind of the problem, right? The reason why now in the US, there aren't a lot of studio production happening is because the union rules and the production costs have increased to the point they don't think it's worth it. So a lot of them they move to like UK or to Asia because it's cheaper. Not just because of the government subsidies or they have government support, but also because it's just cheaper to hire or even just flew people from the US to different countries to film. And that just kind of make Taiwan not that competitive in the scenario because in a lot of other Asian countries they don't really follow that kind of rule and then the costs are also much cheaper. Like
Mm.
to have like a perspective, I guess, like I think the average cost for the production crew here, it's I think equals to like the low budget production in the US kind of. But like
Mm.
for if you're filming in Southeast Asian countries, that's even lower
Oh
with
yeah.
the government subsidies. And then in Taiwan, we don't really have government subsidies. We don't have tax reduction for production. I remember it's actually in Taoyuan. The subsidies for the production thing, from what I heard, is like one person got $2.
What?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's like nothing if you compare to all the other countries who are really actively trying to welcome international team to film,
Mm.
right? Because
Two
that's
US
$2.
dollars
What are
is
you gonna
like
do with $2? Like
enough for a
pizza?
biendang, right? Enough for a biendang, enough for a bento box.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I don't
maybe
think so. Not anymore.
depending on where you at. And so this is what's lacking, even if I feel like we do try to encourage and try to invite more international teams to come to film, but that's honestly the issues. And then like the cost is not going down, and then the text detection stuff are not really working for them. There's also the issue with, I think, the language barrier, because I don't know how the Southeast Asian countries, especially Thailand, do that, but they have a lot of great teams that can speak English really well, and
Mm.
that's kind of like a key thing when it comes to do international co-production. Yeah.
It's international co-production. And what about our own local production reaching out to other countries? Like, for example, Reynolds mentioned earlier about how, Korean entertainment has taken the world by storm, right? Either it's music or K-dramas or movies. Like, it's a local thing that sort of had an international appeal somehow. What about for us here in Taiwan? What's our standing? Like, do we have anything comparable?
I think we are trying. Trying would be the best word, because there is a organization called Taika. It's a part of the government. They are always actively trying to develop talents in different fields with gaming, music, comics, movies, right? And then they work a lot with different big companies. I think recently they are going to work with CJ Entertainment, which is the biggest Korean country, to develop some TV shows. And then also some of the Tokyo, like Japanese entertainment country as well. But I think the biggest issue right now is like, again, just to create good content, it's not enough.
Mm.
None of the current plans so far, from what I have seen, include what they are going to do when the show is completely done and to market that to the world, I think.
Do you think it's a marketing issue, or is it because it's too local specific content? I mean, what makes a show a hit or a movie a hit, and what
It's a
does
little
it?
bit of
Yeah.
both, I will say. And then I feel like another really important thing is you need to have, honestly, you need English. Like the reason why a lot of contents there get to be really popular around the world, it's because that content is available for
More
like
people,
across the
right?
language
Yeah, that's
barrier,
true.
basically.
Yeah.
And then
Hmm.
the issue, like recently, I'm trying to gather some of the information from the Taiwanese shows, like to see. I want some description on the show itself, and then the description for each episode, and I could barely find it online.
Yeah, yeah,
That's kind of like, how are you going to attract someone to watch a foreign show if none of the information is available in English, right?
yeah,
If they
yeah,
are all, only available in Mandarin, that just limits your audience. That limits your market. But not a lot of people realize this. And then now, because AI is so convenient, a lot of people just throw it for AI to generate the translation. But
mm,
a lot of issue is like, obviously there are words like you can probably read it, but after you read the AI translation, you will still don't not to like understand what the heck they're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. It doesn't make any sense, right?
They're not making sense. So it's really like a shame, I feel like, because I do think recently Netflix has been working with a lot of Taiwanese talents. Some of the shows are really, really good, and I think it should have a chance to be like noticed by abroad. But the other issue is Netflix doesn't really promote their own shows. They just put it on their streaming unless it's like something really big like Stranger Things. They don't
Mm,
Yeah,
actively promote the content on their platform. So it
yeah,
will be up
they
to
don't.
the users to perhaps one day dig through their library and then find like a gem.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
even big platforms like Netflix, I know they're making an effort because at least they're trying to, number one, put the shows onto their platform. Number two, where they can, they try to put subtitles in English for certain shows. Not all, and even
They also sub
descriptions,
a lot
right?
of show actually. Like I was watching a Brazilian show back then, and then at first I was really confused because I feel like the audio wasn't matching the actor's mouth, and then turns out Netflix was or like they just automatically played the English dub instead of the
Ah, the
Portuguese.
original. Oh, I see.
So like
Okay.
once I change it, everything feels so much easier. But
Yeah.
that's also the issue because for a lot of like let's say if we are talking about the US or the Canadian market, right? None of these the audience here are used to listen to foreign audio or reading the subtitles. I feel
Mm.
like reading subtitle is a very in a way, I guess, a very Asian and certain European country thing. So, how do you make a foreign content and then interesting enough for them to be willing to watch subtitles or
Mm.
to listen to the English dub? It's also like a challenge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've been trying I done some conduct like research to see how many people are willing to watch subtitles and that's like very little. So
Mm.
Yeah,
yeah,
Americans don't like to read.
no one likes to read. And that's actually also like a big difference when it comes to you see how like a lot of like reality shows in Japanese and Taiwan content, the
Mhm.
screen is always full of graphic, full of words, right? Have you seen
Right.
how the
Yeah.
Japanese
Yeah.
shows were like? And then I tried to do like a test with some of the European audience, and then they kept telling me this is too overwhelming. They cannot
Mm.
understand. They don't know what to focus on the screen
Mm.
actually.
Mm.
So that's why when I start have to work with produce content that's actually for the international audience from Taiwan, I always have to tell the director to tone down the kind of special effect or what they put on the screen. Because basically it's like I understand we are used to it, but European audience or the basically the West audience cannot function with that. They just cannot watch something that with so many things going on the
Yeah, it's
screen.
just distracting for them.
Yeah.
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 And then
Yeah.
he will always they were like, why are we having like a small corner of the people reacting to the what's happening on the bigger screen? And then what am I supposed to focus on this? It's just like it's a really interesting process for me to see how their reaction is and then trying to talk to them like how can we try to improve this. I think it was all like something that I find interesting as I am working into different industry like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Reynold,
mean,
I
Well,
think certain things just don't translate culturally, right?
like
yeah.
I remember growing up, my parents like to watch those shows at 综艺节目, right? Those shows. There's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
variety shows, and I
Variety
never,
shows, yeah.
yeah, but I grew up in here, and I'm not used to those shows. When they watch it, I was like, I don't understand why you would watch that. It's not entertaining, you know. I mean,
I
I
don't know
know we
about you,
have
but I
like
love those.
I mean, after I grew up, maybe, but then, like even like for me, it was in America, you only got a few talk shows, right? And then it's like, but then but when it comes to like those 综艺节目, for a very long time, I just couldn't like why? No, I need some action. I need some like car chasings. I need some like gunfiring or something. Like I need something like this is like sort of boring because they're just talking. They're just using words to entertain, and I just never understood it for a very long time. Maybe it was like something of older generation, but as a young kid or even a young adult, I was like, this is just too boring for me. Like that's too much words. I needed some motion and stuff like that.
Yeah, Reynolds, you bring up a
Honestly,
good point.
yeah.
Even in Taiwan, right, Molly, those kind of programs have died down because you have to look at the zeitgeist of the times. Sometimes as consciousness evolves in society, certain types of format just starts becoming less and less popular. And even here in Taiwan, I noticed that those types of shows have gone down in popularity. They're not as prevalent as they used to be. So, and another thing to account for is to what age group you're trying to show the program to. I mean, there's just so many factors, as I mentioned earlier. Like you're talking about ethnic groups, you're talking about age groups, you're talking about gender, you're talking about culture, and I just feel that to come up with a hit really is like a prayer almost. Like you do your best and try to tailor it so that try to see if it can score with as many audiences as you can. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it feels to me at least that it really is like hanging on by a prayer that it'll just turn into a hit.
I think to be like a global hit, ultimately it has to be with luck, effort, talent, right? But like you couldn't control luck. So what you have to do is make sure you have the right talents, you have put enough efforts into the show. And I think that's also something like when you talk about how I think the kind of talk show, the show 综艺 show in Taiwan, right? I feel like that's still kind of popular, but they are just kind of transformed into on the YouTube platform. Now the younger generation just kind of make their own version of it instead of watching the TV station's version of it. Because they're kind of just getting tired of the old, kind of just like the old media, new media thing. And honestly, I feel like you can always have the chance to be a global hit, but you need to be aware that you have to want it. And I think that's also like a really biggest different mindset here, because I feel like a lot of the Taiwanese audience, they are very content with just creating content for the Taiwanese audiences. And then
Yeah, that's
once
a
you
good
have
point.
that kind of mindset, the kind of effort or the planning that you have for your project is different. So if you really want to be like a global hit, then you have to be more ambitious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yeah,
You have to
it feels
be
like so
think
many things have
bigger.
to align for something to make it big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also something that a while ago we were discussing because at the time, even though like we have pretty good film industry, let's say that, but like there really isn't a lot of participation from the Taiwanese filmmaker to the international film festival, basically. However, you can see a lot of Southeast Asian filmmakers have their names on them. And I think ultimately comes down because in Taiwan, we are having our own film festivals. We have our own industry audiences. So they're really content with what we have. But like for the Southeast Asian filmmakers, they're different. They in their country they may not have the same resources or anything, so they will keep trying to get the resources from Europe, from the US, or from Australia and New Zealand. And then that also at the same time help them train to learn how to make content to appeal to the different or region audiences, and then also help them to put their name into different corner of the world. That's kind of just the differences.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
So is it maybe for Southeast Asia, it's more of a necessity, like because like say Thailand or like a lot of their economy is based off of tourism, so they're trying to grab resources from other countries by us going there to visit them and spending money. So when it comes to like entertainment industry too, they're just trying to grab resources, so they're more and more open to like people come to film, come to their countries to film and do all this stuff. Where Taiwan's like maybe self sufficient, maybe the ambition's not. I don't know. It's like different.
I think
There's no necessity, right? There's like feels like there's no necessity in Taiwan for them
to
to.
promote tourism is definitely one of the reasons why they invite international audience to or production team to come over and film. But I think the reason their filmmaker need to look for other resources is kind of because their government doesn't really have support for them. And then in a lot of Southeast Asian country, they have a lot of restriction on what and how they can create art. There is a very famous Malaysian filmmaker. What's his name? But he basically make all of his movies and got resources in Taiwan. And then another really sad thing is I don't think any of his movie was released in Malaysia. at all.
So
And he is only just one of the filmmakers like that because they have really strict rules on what can be made and what can be released. So that's just kind of how it is. So that's kind of why they are always looking for different kind of resources channel to release their movies and get the resources. So different, I think different situation bring different kind of motive and direction. That's just kind of how it is.
What about here in Taiwan, Molly? I mean, are the rules very strict for what you can or cannot shoot?
No, there really isn't. It just there are certain topics that's being favored, I will say. Yeah.
I do
And
see
then
a
a
lot
lot of
more
times they kind
LGBTQ
of
content that's pushed out from
yeah.
Taiwan. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with because at the time we were the first country who legalized same-sex marriage, right? In Asia at least.
in Asia. Oh,
Yeah, and I also have to do with I think the government. So like you know how we have DPP who is more focusing on telling the story about Taiwan itself. So when you are like you're thinking of a story that's to just talk about the Taiwanese history or the Taiwanese culture, that might be something that the government favor more. So it's easier for you to get the government funding.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I also feel like it's so Taiwanese that it's a reflection of culture too, that we're so content to just be in our own bubble. Like as Molly said a while ago,
yeah,
like just create content for this market. And since we have our own awards anyway, really we don't really care that much about getting, out of our own market. I think it's so Taiwanese. It's like a reflection of the mentality of people here.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I wonder if we get this from Japanese because that's the same mindset for Japanese as well. But the issue is like the issue I feel like is like Japanese people have enough resources to do self sufficient industry, whereas
right.
Taiwan doesn't have it. And I
Yeah.
think that's like a really big issue. And I hope there's a chance that we can change that.
Yeah, it's a matter of
Yeah.
size, right? I think
Yeah.
like that's why you have terms like JDM, for example, in the car world, like Japanese domestic models. Like there are
Mhm.
so many things that they're just content to make for themselves. They don't
Yeah.
ever go out and say, we're going to make this product because we wanted to sell worldwide. They would have certain models that they would do that for, but they have models that they reserve just for themselves, because
Yeah.
it's so specific to what a Japanese person would want or need. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. We get some of that from them, don't we?
Yeah. It was definitely, I think, a very, I don't know, like we definitely got very heavily influenced by them for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Also,
Yeah.
like yeah, for going back again to local stuff here in Taiwan, I think in the early days, my parents explained to me that the entertainment industry and the arts industry was dominated by 外省人, by a lot of people who came from the mainland, because they controlled communications, they controlled media. So naturally, a lot of the artists that were promoted or who were active on our television in the arts
Mm.
were mostly 外省人. And I think, like Molly said, since the DPP has been in favor for the past couple of cycles, election cycles, that the cultural shift has sort of like been visible or noticeable, that different types of contents are coming out, and also like promotion of more local Taiwanese stuff that's not necessarily a white and content. Would that be like a fair assessment, Molly, do you think?
It's definitely fair because you have to think, like, to be fair, you have to think about that Taiwan has actually been governed under like an authoritarian government for a very long time until when was it? Like
1980s? Yeah.
1980s. So
Yeah.
we only have quote unquote democracy for 20, 40 years ish, which
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
very, very
It's
short
short.
amount of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Sure.
And before that, everything was very highly governed, monitored. And then a
Mm.
lot of time, the people who were in power were the people who were they were fleeing with Chiang Kai-shek from China.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then they also have to feed people the propaganda where at
Right.
one point of their life they have to go back, fight back, and trying to take back mainland China.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like they're trying to more focusing on develop our self identity for the people who live there. And then it's not really necessarily like a Weissen or Bunsen, because I think Weissen then is also Taiwanese people. They are just more trying to focus on their experiences in Taiwan, or trying to understand more how our relationship with the land is. And it's also going to be kind of just trying to make something against the authoritarian government like that. And I feel like this is like for me, I think it's really interesting to see how Taiwan and all the Southeast Asian countries are going, because I feel like in a way it's also like a parallel, because I do wonder if we didn't get to have a free election, we don't have a free elected government, will we be kind of similar like all the Southeast Asian countries now, where they also have to go through different tunnels and different methods from Europe or in the US to get resources and make movies about that. I think that's actually like a really interesting thing I've been wondering for a while.
Yeah, it's a good topic to think about. My personal theory is that why Thailand is so good at making all these ghost movies and scary movies is because there are certain things that are taboo for them to film. So they just
That's actually very
focus
true.
on
Yeah.
focus on these scary movies, which by the way
Yeah.
they're very good at.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then yeah, I as you said, like to be fair, there were a lot of still now in the industry, a lot of the people who are in power are still from the kind of era where we were talking about, like the authoritarian power. But I think
Mhm.
at the same time, they are slowly changing, I will
Yeah, slowly
say.
fading away. Yeah.
And then I think at the same time, that's not the only reason what it's affecting the industry. I think at the same time, it's also just like we need to be acceptable to new culture shock, because I think that's something we are really bad at.
Hmm.
Um, I do feel like there are more and more new talents and more different cultures and everything coming into the industry, but the people who can make the decisions currently aren't always um, okay with this kind of new cultural shock, or
Yeah,
like they
it
don't
takes
really
time.
understand that. So it takes time, or perhaps it needs some time for them to eventually retire from those positions, or to
Yeah.
understand the new trend, to have the industry to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reynolds, it's not even that hard to see the differences. All you have to do is go on YouTube and look up some classic shows or
Mhm.
videos or music videos from let's say the 80s or the late 70s, and you'll see
Uh-huh.
that they're predominantly whites and people who are artists. And then you would have very few, quote unquote local Benson or Taiwanese that made it during that time. Remember, we had the our own Taiwanese version of "We Are the World." That was like a big hit back in the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was like our own version of that where they got like all the famous singers of that time to go record in a recording studio,
Yeah.
and then
I
each would
remember
sing a
that.
line, right? And then you look at the
Yeah.
lineup, and it's like, wow, it's like 90% white, and then like only like 10% maybe local Taiwanese. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
even that long ago. It was just like back in the 80s, you know?
Oh, yeah. That was the 90s. Oh, maybe.
Nah, dude.
Maybe.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is that it's not even that hard to dig. All you have to do is to go on YouTube and look up those videos from the past. And like, it's all there, right? So
Right.
interesting. Also, I think how
Yeah.
Taiwanese people were so content to just like do our own thing sometimes, and then we're so oblivious. We live in a bubble. We're just doing our own thing, and
Yeah.
yeah, I
It's
think
very.
Molly's right that language. Eventually, if we don't brush up our English skills to make it more just like common and just widespread everywhere, it's going to be hard for us to attract international production or to link ourselves up more with, the mainstream internationally. Yeah, I do agree with
Yeah.
that.
But I'm still surprised because there's like so many English schools. I mean, maybe it's because I feel there's a lot because when even I taught English in Taiwan. I mean,
I think it
uh,
also depending, because I feel like you know how I personally feel like the Taiwanese people and then the Taiwanese American are completely living in a different world, even
They're
they are
different
all staying
animals.
in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And then this is something I kind of realize the in these Taiwanese American, even though they have their own production companies, right? They don't really interact with the main
Yeah, I think you're right.
people in the
Yeah.
industry, or they
Yeah.
are not aware of that. So a lot of times now I'm trying to bridge that, sort of like I'm trying to like introduce them to some of the like the Taiwanese more traditional studio and stuff, trying to say, hey, so I know you want to work with like this, let's say NHK or something like that. Here is a company that can speak fluent, where they have connection with abroad. Like, why don't
Right.
we consider working with a new company, stuff like that? Because they already have their own partners that have been working for a really long time. There really isn't a need for them to meet new people. And then it's also because how a lot of connection they were built through working, and then perhaps from the two art university that we have in Taiwan, the Taida and then the Beida. So a lot of connection were formed at those university, which is very different because a lot of Chinese American they would choose to go abroad and then come back. So
Mm.
they don't have the kind of chance or access to that. And that's why they're just living in a two different world in Taiwan together.
Yeah, we need more people like you, Molly, to connect everybody together.
And bridge the gap. Bridge the gap. Yeah.
Like it's not even just like they don't give them the chance. It's like I don't think they are aware each other exists in Taiwan. It's that kind of a billion, you know?
I think it's just it's not just the entertainment industry. I feel there's a disconnect in every single industry in Taiwan when it comes to like back then when I was living in Taiwan, when even like restaurants, you have the Taiwanese Americans, the ABCs or the foreigners opening up restaurants, and then because they think the Taiwanese are doing it wrong, and then they're not working with each other, um, and then yeah, but then or even just like apps, like we have our other friend on uh, who is it Nick, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just thinking
yeah,
about him.
yeah, yeah. It's the
Yeah.
same thing, same issue with startups, like in technology startups. Again, government. The issue with government making it, creating the ecosystem that for startups to thrive here is an issue, as well as a lot of startups here. If it's Taiwanese person starting up, they only develop it for like for Taiwan. Their plans, they don't think of like, oh, it's going to be an app that can, that the USA or the Europe can use. And where Nick, my friend, is from Canada, and we were talking that, yeah, when he develops an app, he's not his idea of a market isn't Taiwan. It's the U.S. So whatever he develops is what can, if the U.S., North America would use, or the Westerners would use, because if he only develops something for Taiwan, there's really nothing. There's no market. There's no, like, he feels like it's not something he can make a living off of. So I think it just goes, it's not just again, entertainment industries, all through the line where they're all divided, and they're not really there's a gap that no one's bridging, because the foreigners, the Taiwanese, the ABCs are doing their own thing, and then the Taiwanese are doing their own thing, and then everyone's not like working together. I think it's just, yeah, weird.
Yeah, it's frustratingly
Right,
Taiwanese. I think it's just so ingrained in our culture.
right.
We just have our own thing going on. Like we live in that bubble again, right? Again, that bubble that I keep talking about, and we're just happy. The saying ignorance is bliss. Kind of like
Mm-hmm.
that, right? We're just gonna kind of like doing our own thing, and then
Yeah,
to have people like Molly is really important. So that to make just these two tracks or these parallel tracks aware of each other, like, hey, you're actually running in the same direction, and you're side by side with each other. You're just not aware of each other, or you choose not to really look at each other, but you should because there's a lot of resources on both sides that you can share.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard because I feel like at the same time I think it's also I think Taiwanese as a whole is such a fascinating identity because I think while the government try really hard to promote the idea like to let us feel like oh we are just basically our root is in China, but like we have so many trades that's so heavily influenced by Japanese. And then this what you were saying was also kind of the true like I think in a way we are very much like Japanese. We're used to work with certain type of people. We don't really want to work with foreigners. We're not exposed to that kind of
Hmm.
idea.
Yeah.
Like and then they just kind of focusing very inwardly like and I think it's also like the how it is like a lot of people keep saying Taiwanese people are very friendly but that's kind of because you are coming to Taiwan
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
visitor. But once you actually decided to live here or you're trying to assimilate into this community, it's actually very hard. It's just as hard as you're trying to assimilate into a Japanese community, which is impossible. Like they
Exactly. Yeah.
are always just thinking very, very differently. And then I don't know, like I think for some people, they will never feel like they are Taiwanese completely because of how the rest of the people in the community reacts, right? And
Yeah.
then like I have so many amazing friends, non-Taiwan, like non like white people, and then Latinos and
Mhm.
African Americans. They speak amazing Mandarin. They understand the Taiwanese culture really, really well. But then they stay here for 20, 40 years. They are still foreigners to the Taiwanese people.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think it's very sad as well. And I think it's gonna be like a really I think it's also like a really good thing for us to reconsider what does it mean to be Taiwanese. Because I think we are tying our identity to the Chinese history so tight. And then we completely forgot we have indigenous people, Austronesian, and then
Mhm.
now we have more and more people from like Southeast Asian or even from the world, every corner. So that's just something
Yeah,
that's need to be reevaluated. Because
exactly.
honestly, some people speak better Mandarin than I am. So should I get disqualified and then they have my Taiwanese citizenship?
Yeah, I'm so
Right.
glad
Yeah.
Molly
Exactly.
articulates this so well because I hear this over and over and over again from every guest that we have on the show or even from just people I meet in life. Exactly what Molly said. You can
Mhm.
stay here for 20, 30 years, speak good Mandarin, understand the culture,
Right.
but doesn't mean you're accepted completely as a Taiwanese. Heck, don't even have to look that far. Molly, for example, feels that way sometimes. I feel
Like
that
my
way
best friend
sometimes.
couldn't get credit card here, like even though he stayed here for a very long time and he has speak good English, but because he only have the ARC, which is the
Hmm.
foreign
Oh
workers
yeah.
visa, he wasn't allowed to apply for credit card, which to me is crazy because like how easy it was to apply for credit card in the US. Like I still have two. Like
Right. That's the American way because that's how they make Americans make
that's
money.
how I make
Everything's
money,
on
but
debt,
like
right?
Yeah.
yeah.
So Reynolds, for example, he loves coming here. He feels there are a lot of good things here in Taiwan, but he does sense that, people always look at him as he's ABC. He's
Yeah.
always going to be labeled as that. And there are some advantages that come with that, but obviously there are disadvantages too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's just the way it is. And I think that kind of like bleeds into other things like Molly's industry, into film, into the arts, into the way we relate to foreigners, into how we think about globalizing ourselves. It just that aspect of our culture sort of bleeds into everything, don't you think?
There's too much Asian pride. There we go. Or
It just
something.
had like a really weird I don't know. That kind of yeah, I would say pride and also kind of weird mentality. Yeah.
I think it's insecurity of just we're shy that way or insecure about our language skills sometimes, and that in that sense we're very similar to the Japanese in that way. That it's a white foreigner, it's a foreigner. Yeah, I can be friendly, because that's probably the polite thing to do.
Right.
But I'm friendly because I'm trying to avoid actually engaging with this person. You know what I mean? Sort of
Yeah.
like use it as a shield or as an excuse to not fully engage with somebody that's different from you. You know, I do find that happens a lot here.
I think
Yeah.
also I was having a conversation with another friend. Um, it could be intimidation, like they feel foreigner, white people, ABCs, have like some sort of worldly wisdom or something. Like if they infiltrate my friend group or something, or my work or something, it's like a hostile takeover or something, right?
This is
Yeah.
gonna be like a whole different conversation.
Podcast.
I think
Yeah. That's like
honestly, Taiwanese people's attitude toward different people with different skin color or culture, I think it's a very fascinating thing to see as well. Like, because I have so many different friends coming to visit, and then they have very, very different experience here in Taiwan. And I think one of the things that really fascinate me, it's how basically white people and non-white people are being treated here, which is
yeah,
drastically different.
different.
But
Hey, Reynold,
this is
we
a
should
really
invite
different
Molly on
conversation.
again. This is like a whole
Right.
new
Yeah.
other episode.
Right. Yeah. We should have Mike on too, right? We started that whole ABC talk.
This is
Yeah.
another hour and a half,
Yeah.
conversation right here.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
gonna be a really, really long conversation for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Molly has time. Yeah. We should. Yeah. We would love to have her come back on. We could have a
Yeah, but I will have to check on my schedule. I currently have last thing to do because this is currently like we just wrap up everything for now.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how it's gonna go next month or next week, but I will keep you posted and see
Yeah.
how
that's
it
cool.
goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me today. It's really fun to talk to you guys. And then
Oh,
I
thank you.
probably
Same
have to
here.
go now because I
You
think my
have to go.
washing machine is done for a while. Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
All
Molly.
right. All
Thank you
right.
so
Thank you
much.
again. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
thank you so much
for
for
joining
having me.
us.
And then
See you
looking
again soon.
forward to see you guys again.
All
Bye.
right. Thank
Yes.
you.
Cheers.
Bye.
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 Cheers. And to our audience, thank you again. Please like and subscribe, and sharing is caring. And till our next episode, see you guys.